I'd like to bring up a good friend, someone who played an instrumental role in my life when I first came to Silicon Valley all the way from North Carolina in 2011. And that is Mary Grove, Director of Google for Entrepreneurs. And quick note, make sure we keep to the AV. Please keep the sponsor slide up. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wayne. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for participating, Mary. Like I said in the beginning, you played a tremendous role. Like, I'm not sure if everyone knows, like, when we came out here in 2011, and for people who don't know, we had started an incubator and accelerator, and we was at Google, we was being filmed with CNN, and you were there as a judge to review companies. And I was one of the people pitching. And from that moment, Google for Entrepreneurs played a tremendous role, and yourself played a tremendous role in my life. So thank you again.
No, thank you, and thanks for putting this together. You and Melinda have done amazing work for the past several years, and just today's convening is the culmination of years of hard work and passion, and it's really a privilege for me to be here, so thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks. You're welcome. You're welcome. And for that reason, that's one of the reasons I want to kick off the conference with you as, Fireside Chat, because all the work you've done with Google for Entrepreneurs, and I look at the entire ecosystem when we talk about diversity in the workplace. I strongly believe it starts with entrepreneurs, right? And so with your work with Google for Entrepreneurs, and also just your journey, can you talk about that? So how did Mary Grove become the Mary Grove? I think it's 11 years at Google, early adopter. Can you talk about your path?
Sure. So my story begins, my parents were both immigrants from Thailand. And they were born in rural villages there with very little resources. They both immigrated to the US and met here, and to me really embodied that quintessential American dream of seeking opportunity, pulling yourself up, with lack of resources, and really finding a community here. So my parents were entrepreneurs who ran a small business together for 35 years. And growing up in that culture, that environment, was very inspirational to me, but just seeing their grit really inspired me. And so my background is I studied policy, international development. I did a fellowship at the UN in Bangkok, again, returning to Thailand, where I worked on sex trafficking in women and children and trying to combat that in Southeast Asia. And so my passion has always been in the emerging markets, in development, and looking at women's issues in particular. But what was missing for me was that technology was that critical enabler that could really propel, advance us so much more quickly. So I ended up joining Google 11 years ago, as you mentioned. We were about 2,000 people as a company, and I worked on our initial public offerings. We went public in 2004, and I worked on that process for a year. Ended up falling in love completely with the company, the mission, the values. I spent the next 6 years in a team called New Business Development, looking at new opportunities, new markets, sort of a catch-all for early stage product business development. We worked in the emerging markets for many years, where I met incredible entrepreneurs. And so I moved back to the Valley about 5 years ago. I keep saying I just moved back. And things have changed. They've accelerated. The whole, the world has become so much more globally connected. And so about 4 years ago, we had a really neat opportunity to create a new team within Google that is essentially a startup tasked with helping build startup ecosystems and strengthen them globally, using our resources as a company in terms of our talent, our technology, our capital, and really bringing that together. So I'm very proud of the journey of what the team has built over the past 4 years, but we're currently working with about 44 partners, and both directly as well in 130 countries, with this mission of really, Google began as a startup in a garage. How can we help support the next generation?
Awesome. So you mentioned your parents, and then we know there's tremendous lot of conversation around women, diversity in tech, and yourself. You was featured in a magazine recently. Which one was that? Vanity Fair?
It was really an honor. Elle did a spread on women in tech, which is really exciting to me to see some of the more mainstream magazines targeting female audiences, really embracing tech and showing that, dispelling the myth that tech is not mainstream and not for everyone, or not accessible to everyone. So it was definitely an honor, but through that experience, met a ton of other amazing women in tech here in Silicon Valley, which was neat.
Awesome. So let's talk about some of the work that you've done with Google for Entrepreneurs. You've been working supporting diversity programs. You touched on that. So let's talk about some of the initiatives that you currently supported early days, and you saw some success out of that.
Sure, so from the beginning, and we talk about entrepreneurship, to me that we define that as anybody who is taking risk and creating value and really seeking opportunity. It doesn't have to be a tech startup. You can use technology to help enable your business and help enable, create a global platform for you, essentially. So diversity has always been one of our top 3 values as a team since we started. We set goals every year, and that goal is not one that has ever gone away from the top 3, nor do I envision that until the world changes. And so our approach is threefold. The first is really targeting vertical organizations and partners who specifically are trying to bring in more underrepresented minorities into entrepreneur communities around the world. Thank you. So vertical partners. So we have 44 partners around the world, and 7 of them are specifically focused on diversity outreach. So amazing groups like Code 2040, the platform, Astia, who's helping women get access to capital, Manos Accelerator, an accelerator for Latino founders. I was just at a reception last night where they are being honored and receiving a grant from the Small Business Administration. Aging 2.0, an accelerator that's actually based right here in Galvanize upstairs. They're targeting technologies for the aging senior population. So I think it's important to remember that diversity has many definitions. What does that mean in our specific communities around the world? The second part of our philosophy is, because we have this really amazing partner network of organizations around the world, what can we do to layer horizontally? If we can have a program that layers across all of them, to think about small incremental change percentage-wise, but when you aggregate all of that, the change is extraordinary. And so one example is last year, we ran a global campaign called 40 Forward, where we put together a $1 million fund in addition to all of our individual partnerships. We said, if you have an idea, partners, for how to increase representation of women in your programs, accelerators, spaces, portfolios, our collective goal as a global network is 25% increase in representation. So raise your hand, submit it, let's take some of this funding and make that happen. So the reason we called it 40 Forward is we had 40 startup communities come forward and do that. And we saw over the course of the year, 10,000 women participated alongside 3,000 men. It's important to note the men and women working together. But we noted a number of learnings from that, which I'm happy to dig into if that's helpful. But ultimately, it was this network effect that really mattered. And the last thing is programming that we run ourselves. So accelerators, classes. A new one that I'm really excited about, we just launched, is called Founders Over 50, which is what it sounds like. And it's the idea that you don't have to be just a 23-year-old founder in a hoodie, right? That experience matters too, and that everyone is welcome.
Awesome, awesome. So let's switch gears a little bit. We're in San Francisco. I'm from North Carolina. I moved out here about 4 years ago now. Love it here, and the conversation is grassroots in terms of diversity and inclusion in tech.
Right.
And everybody, we have people from across the world here, East Coast, West Coast, worldwide. But like, how important, why is it so important to have this diversity and inclusion in tech conversation here in the Bay Area? And it's important we get it right here in the Bay Area, in Silicon Valley.
Absolutely. So I would say, first of all, that I know there's a lot of attention that Silicon Valley and San Francisco gets, but I am a firm believer, I'm so bullish and so excited about what's happening in communities across our country, from Durham to Minneapolis to Chicago to Austin, and really communities all over the world. So I'm always the first to sort of say, it's not just happening in Silicon Valley, and this is not the only phenomenon in the world that we should really look to as an example. But that said, because it is such a unique ecosystem here for a combination of historical factors, and people have moved here, and the density of capital and of talent. So that said, I think we as Silicon Valley have a huge responsibility to be a good role model and really force ourselves to have that conversation. And I think in the last 2 years, this issue of lack of diversity in tech in Silicon Valley has really taken center stage in the tech press. The issue itself, as we all know, is not new. But the fact that companies are getting called out, there's more scrutiny, there's studies being conducted, there's data being published, is really forcing more accountability, which I think is a wonderful thing. But I think that is the number one thing we can do, is raise awareness of the issues, but really drive the conversation here and be honest about what is working, but also what's not working, and have that be a model for others too. Agreed,
agreed. In terms of early stage entrepreneurs, you work with a lot of companies, see a lot of startups. We don't see as much conversation around early startups focused on inclusion or hiring inclusive teams, or like the co-founders maybe all white, and then it's like from there, all right, you need to hire a Latino, African-American women. Why is that? And what can we do in terms of all the companies see, like, in terms of solutions? Because that's part of the theme of the conference, is say, like, if you're a early stage startup, you want to hire diverse talent. Because we all believe, we know the data, we know the stats, say, you have a diverse team, it's more innovative, it's better. So, like, what solutions have you seen, in terms of working with companies?
It's really interesting. I think if the more that we just make diversity and hiring from the get-go a fundamental value from the start and hold that line and not waver from it at the interest of speed or how can I fill this role most quickly? We see that. I really believe, and when we advise startups, the number one determinant of success is the team, the talent, right? The ideas may change, may expand, the products may change, but that talent and the people you hire from day one really matter and set the culture and set the values and ultimately, as you said, bring in more diverse perspectives, help you build for more diverse audiences. And so I think it's both an issue of how do we cultivate a strong pipeline, but beyond that, there's so much talent that is there that's not necessarily in the existing networks. And when I think about it, I don't think about building, how do we build a separate network for women or for African Americans or for Asian Americans or Latinos. It's how do we bring this top talent into the existing networks and get them an interview, get them a seat at the table. And so I think there are ways. It takes longer. It requires more work. But I definitely would say if you don't waver from that from day one, we've seen startups we work with have been most successful when they have, because great people know great people, right? So hire a few and then start to bring those networks into our existing networks.
Yeah, agreed. Let's switch gears now let's talk about Google for Entrepreneurs, because you have a worldwide mission. And you've seen, like, I think there's a Tel Aviv office, other places across the world. How does Google for Entrepreneurs support diversity across the globe? And then how have you seen diversity overseas be more inclusive versus Silicon Valley Bay Area?
It's a great question. I think one of the things we've seen internationally as well is because the tech press has been so prominent and pronounced here in the US, it almost makes, there's a sense of fear of getting called out again because it's unclear what diversity might mean in Paris or Dubai or Nairobi, but diversity means many things, right? Age, gender, LGBT communities, and so we've been thinking hard about how can we try to set an example as well by some of the programs that we run. So Tel Aviv, as Wayne referenced, one of our major projects is called Campus, and so we have a network of 6 campuses, soon to be 6 globally, that are 20,000 square feet buildings for the startup community. Everything's completely free, but we partner with all the leaders in a given ecosystem. So we bring in a cafe partner, a co-working partner, accelerators to provide education, and we provide Google resources and education within those. So we've got them in London, Tel Aviv, Madrid, Seoul. We're about to launch in Warsaw and Sao Paulo. And this is a global network of spaces. And we also partner with wonderful spaces, about 20 of them globally, like Galvanize. Galvanize is one of our strongest partners. And so through that, we've been able to really experiment with different programs because we have no fear about failing quickly. We'll try out an idea, and if it doesn't work, we'll easily move on to the next one. But one of the programs that we've tested that's worked really well is called Campus for Moms. And so many of us have been part of or mentored or spoken at accelerator programs, and we've seen the average accelerator is 3 months, very immersive, 24/7, not conducive to moms, new moms, perhaps women on maternity leave who want to work on an idea. So we tried this experiment called Campus for Moms, and it's a 10-week baby-friendly startup school where we condense all the curricula into 1 day per week. And you bring your babies with you. We have crying rooms and playrooms and feeding rooms. And we piloted this in Tel Aviv. I went to the first demo day. And these are extraordinary women building incredibly robust and exciting startups that are solving global problems. But what we needed to do was just tweak the existing model to allow them in. What we've done now is expand that to every campus that we have. We're running our 5th edition as we speak in London. And so that sort of proved to us that, hey, sometimes we don't have to rethink the fact that accelerators are helpful, but the models can be different. And so it's been very fun to have our own breeding ground where we can sort of test and see what works, what doesn't work, what we might help promote as a model.
Yeah, totally. Let's go to venture capital, right? That's a space where is 99.9% white, mostly white men. Man, I love my white men allies. We all need to do this together. But there's data. Venture capital is primarily white. And speaking of that, while we're on that note, that's another part of this conference and these conversations is that to some people these are uncomfortable conversations, right? Part of why we, the whole conference about inclusion, it's okay to have conversations that everyone may not agree with, and talking about race, talk about gender. And so we're going to talk about some real issues today. So on that note, back to venture capital.
Sure.
99.9% white. The data is also, that's the investors. The women seem to be increasing more women investors. The data shows that probably 1% of venture capital goes to African Americans. Really less than that goes to Latinos, and around 15 to 18 for women. What can we do to change that? What do you think? Is it going to be the LPs, the hedge funds, culture? What are your thoughts on that space?
Sure. So I think in the latest stat I had heard around women was that women are starting companies at 1.5 times the rate of men, and yet only 5%. So that's an amazing stat, right? But the flip side of that is that only 5% of venture-backed startups are led by women, was the last I heard. But if it's 15, that's better. I think that one great challenge is a lack of having good data that drives good decision making. One thing that we're really excited about, and we've been talking about this for a long time, so Google for Entrepreneurs is partnering with the National Venture Capital Association, who's about to release a study, a big survey of US data about race, ethnicity, and gender across the US, looking at investment, looking at startups. Right? There isn't great data that postdates 2010. And so we can't solve what we don't know. And the fact that, and Wayne and I who care deeply about this, we don't know the actual last number, right? And these numbers are old. So that's part one. So the NVCA is releasing this data, but Google for Entrepreneurs will be partnering to release what we hope is a beautiful and useful data visualization site that's coming out in October. So I think part one is identifying and being honest about the data and admitting, what's the state of the union, so to speak, and then we can start to address some of these. But we have this conversation all the time, right? Publicly, behind closed doors, and I truly believe that it's less of a pipeline issue. I meet so many talented entrepreneurs, who are not white men, right? And it's about the network, it's about the community. Venture is very much a relationship business. It's a referrals business. You can't walk into the doors of a fund, knock on the door, and get a meeting. And so again, back to that question of how do we strive to make sure that we're including in the existing network all of the talent that's there. I think it's events like this, it's conferences like these, but back to my example of 40 Forward, those mechanisms, we don't have to reinvent the wheel, reinvent all of our programs, but if we can reinvent components of it. And I'll give you one example. Startup Grind is one of our global partners. Right? They host these amazing event series in 185 cities around the world. And it's a monthly format, a fireside chat with a prominent entrepreneur or an investor who might be able to meet your startup. But it's really about the community that gathers there in that room. And so we're going to kill this. As you'll know, I'm not actually quiet. So. Is this better? Great. Great. So Startup Grind. During 40 Forward, they made May, that month, Women Take the Stage month. And so during that month, they deliberately invited female speakers in all of their chapters around the world. What we saw was that May was the single highest, was the month in Startup Grind history with the single highest number of events and attendees ever. And they've packed the stage with women all over the world, right? So the hypothesis there is that you might think like, oh, I can't get great female speakers in every country in the world. You can. Not only can you, more people are coming out to see them, and more women are coming out to see them. So putting women, putting underrepresented minorities on stage, front and center, as role models, whether you know them or not, is huge. But right now, one thing that I'm very heartened by is conversations with a lot of VCs in our communities and our networks. They really are genuinely wanting to see a more diverse pipeline. So it's events like these. It's how do we help supply that to them in an easy way, and it's going to take some time, but the desire's there, the time's right, and I firmly believe the talent is there as well.
Agreed. So in the next 3 to 5 years, we see hopefully more funded, diverse founders.
Come talk to me as well, because Google for Entrepreneurs, we don't invest directly, but we constantly are, one very important part of our mission is to try to connect startups who are ripe for investment with the right investors. And so to that extent, referrals and we're happy to try to do that too.
Awesome, awesome. So I'm gonna ask Mary one more question, then we're gonna open up the Q&A. So you and your husband have a nonprofit called North Stars, and I got a chance to be a judge to see the North Stars pitch. So I think it's a great mission, and I think it's something that should be shared here. It could be an example that other people can use in their community. So can you share what North Stars is about?
Sure, and thanks again for being a judge as well. So my husband is originally from Minnesota. I was born in Iowa, so we have huge family and roots. I see an Iowan here, maybe? Minneapolis. Minneapolis, okay. We have huge roots and huge family in the Midwest, and we clearly live here now and work here. So we really wanted a way to build a bridge and be connected to both communities we love and both communities that are home to us. And we thought it'd be fun to work on a project together. So a couple years ago, we launched a nonprofit called Silicon North Stars. And the idea is that we want to really inspire and reach underserved youth from the Twin Cities and help connect them to Silicon Valley and provide them with access, inspiration. And so every year, the culminating event is this 1 week long summer boot camp. We bring out 16 students, and they're all rising freshmen, so they're about to start 9th grade. And we deliberately target students who come from challenging backgrounds, underserved communities, from different schools. And we bring them here for a week-long boot camp, which has 3 components. One is let's go and look inside of, let's demystify some of Silicon Valley's largest companies like Facebook and Google and YouTube. And let's go to some universities like Stanford. Let's go to Berkeley and do a ropes course. Let's go to some startups. We visited here at Galvanize. Let's do design thinking. Let's connect them one-on-one with mentors here in the Valley. And then at the end, they formed teams and they worked on an idea to solve sort of a pressing social challenge. And they pitched at a demo day right here at Galvanize, actually. And Wayne and Melinda were 2 of our judges. But for me, it was really wonderful to be able to translate some of what I do at Google and really bring that to a younger audience. But we think of it as inspiration for them, but really we come away so inspired because when you're 13 or 14, your whole life is in front of you and those opportunities. And we tried really hard. One of the outcomes that I was proudest of was at the end of the week, many of the students said, wow, Silicon Valley is very diverse, and companies like Google and Facebook, I could totally work there. And we were like, oh wow, because we tried really hard. Right? When we went to these companies and we worked with our friends and colleagues at these companies, we said Facebook, Google, YouTube, Indiegogo. When you come present to the students, speak to the students, can you think about diversity too? And can you bring diverse speakers? And can you show us diversity within what it means within your company? So for them to leave with that takeaway really touched me, but really showed me that we all can change the future. If it's one student at a time, or if it's going to a company and asking them that and having them think about what is my diversity situation. So we're really hopeful, but I think it's about the next generation in that way, literally, but also this idea that you can get a little inspiration from here, go back to Minnesota and be your future leaders. You don't have to move here to be successful.
Awesome. I think that's a great initiative. So we're going to take 2 questions from the audience. I think we're going to volunteer to give the mic from the back. And we know the format. We know how conferences are. Name, company name, question. Got it? So anybody have a question? One in the back far here, and the lady in the middle here.
Right. I'm Nitin Rai. I'm from Portland, Oregon, ex-Silicon Valley 27 years ago. I am starting a venture fund that's focused on inclusive entrepreneurs, minority entrepreneurs. My backers are a Black American lady and a Japanese American guy. If that can happen in Portland, why can't it happen in Silicon Valley? And my question is, why can't Google put their money where the mouth is and do something like that?
Sorry, I just want to make sure I heard the question right. So you're starting a new venture fund focused on underrepresented minority communities, which is awesome. And the question is, what can Google do to help support that?
And why can't other
funds? My supporters is an institutional fund in Oregon that's run by a Black American lady and a Japanese American guy. And they're willing to put money in an Indian American guy to focus on the minorities. Why can't that happen in Silicon Valley? And why can't Google do that?
Yeah. So he has a fund in Portland, and is backed by Indian and some other diverse individuals. And basically, if that diverse fund can happen in Portland, why can't diverse fund happen here?
They absolutely can, right? And there's a number of amazing entrepreneurs right now with diverse backgrounds who are actually raising funds. Like Charles Hudson's a great example of an entrepreneur, of an investor who's doing amazing. Troy Carter just launched a new $50 million fund called Cross Culture. So there are a lot of people who are doing that. Astia Global, right, really focused on connecting female founders with access to early stage capital. So I actually think, A, there are many people who are tackling this issue. B, we need a lot more. And as far as your question of what Google can do to help, a ton, I hope a ton. I hope Google for Entrepreneurs is but a slice of what we endeavor and aspire to do as a company. But as our team of 25 people around the world, I commit to you, we're trying very hard. One thing we don't do is directly invest or take equity. All the work we do is at no cost or no charge, and there's no equity exchange in that way. We also have a venture capital fund that invests in startups at Google separately, right? So I think there's a number of things, but if you have ideas, we're always open. We do partner with and sponsor groups like Astia. Again, we don't take equity in them, but the focus of Google for Entrepreneurs is really on that enabling layer of partnering with community builders. So if you know a great group like Numi Accelerator, Manas Accelerator, or Aging 2.0, please send them our way because we're always actively looking for them. But I'm really excited about what you're doing and would love to chat with you after.
Cool. And a group like BUILDUP. And a group like BUILDUP.
Of course. It exists right here. Wait, why don't you tell us about BUILDUP?
Yeah, so that organization. Yeah, cool. So we have another question from the lady in the middle. Can you raise your hand? Yeah. And the mic.
I can just be loud.
Let's do the mic. Let's do the mic. Name, organization, question.
Hi, I'm Annie. I'm a recent graduate, and I'm currently working at Flight. And my question is, we all know that diversity starts at the very beginning of startups, from even those first 5 hires. And I'm sure everyone here has heard people say, well, we don't want to lower the bar just to hire for diversity, which is ridiculous. What do you say to people who say that?
Great question.
I get extremely aggravated with people who say that, right? Because it just doesn't, it's completely untrue, and it just shows a lack of open-mindedness and willingness to actually look. So I would just tell them that's completely untrue, and let's look at numerous examples. Let's look at a startup like WeDeliver, who's a startup in our partner network that pitched at our Google for Entrepreneurs demo day last year. And they're a 3-person founding team, 2 African Americans and a Latina founder, doing awesome work, crushing it. They just got acquired by national same-day delivery company Deliver. Right, it's one example of many. But I think that you can point to all these teams who are having amazing outcomes, or companies like Bevel and Maven, who address the question, why should we build products and technologies for diverse populations? The economic argument is, supersedes obviously it's the right thing to do, but if you look at the economics of these billion-dollar markets that are untapped or not fully utilized, that's your argument there for why you should care. But our team, Google for Entrepreneurs, we are, to do the math, we're about 65 to 70% female, actually, and I think that hasn't been hard to do at all. We have not lowered the bar. We've never thought about it, changing that at all. So I think it definitely starts at home.
Yeah, great question. I do want to comment on something you said earlier, and that was, and I think it also goes to your question, lowering the bar, and that was about speakers on stage and women and diversity. That's something that Melinda and I, we both care, and we put a lot of work into making sure that the conference lineup is very diverse. We have over 120 speakers, women, Latino, LGBT, trans, African American, and honestly, you get the feeling where people are like, it's a diverse conference, it's not going to be as good as everything else, right? It's a diverse conference, oh, it can't cost as much as a women's conference at $800 or TechCon I'm going to call them out, their conference is $3,000, and I'll be honest, it's not as good as this one, right? And we're just getting started.
You guys are amazing, honestly.
We got people in TechCons here. I love the team over there, but 3,000 conference, and we got 120 speakers and diverse, and this is about us, but it's also about everyone here, and all the speakers, all the attendees to say, look, we can have a great quality conference just as good as everyone else, and we're not lowering the bar. We just make it more inclusive.
I think it's incredible. I mean, look around you at all the amazing attendees and look at the lineup of speakers. And I know the demand. There's a long wait list. People want to tune into the live stream. I got dozens of emails personally saying, you know Wayne and Melinda, could you get me in? Like everyone wants to come here, and that's an amazing, and like you said, this is just the beginning.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing what you do.
Well, thank you, thank you. One last question, and we're gonna wrap up. It's my favorite kind of question to ask. I'm a geek, I'm a nerd. If there was one technology, one innovative solution product that doesn't exist today that you wish you could use, what would it be?
I think one thing I've been thinking about for a long time, and especially as we, much of our work is global, and we know that the world is truly a global economy now. The internet has completely democratized access to entrepreneurship. One major thing missing is a payments gateway in the emerging markets. And this would open up and disrupt. It's absolutely imperative. And I know a lot of people are trying to solve this challenge, but we haven't found the right way to tackle it yet. So I think making the economics of entrepreneurship in the internet era truly global is huge. And you have extraordinary entrepreneurs right now who are building great businesses, but there's no payments mechanism, it has to be cash on delivery, or there's no way to repatriate revenue that does happen in one country into another. And so that's sort of on my wish list.
Awesome, awesome. But thank you. Give it a Mary Grove, everyone.
Thank you.